And we are live. Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad. Happy Festivus to the rest of us. So don't celebrate Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. And if you don't celebrate anything at all, still I want to thank you for joining in either on the live stream or on the replay. So to get us into that little festive spirit, nothing would be Christmassy without a funny hat and a little Christmas music. Feel free to sing along. And if you don't know the words, just say la 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 la. All right, that's enough of that. Don't want to drive you too crazy with the funny music. Fa la 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 la. All righty, so I want to say hello to Shayla, Whiskey Central. I think she's an American living down in Mexico. So Shayla, I want to send you a Christmas present. Hold on, I'll show you what it is. I'm going to send you a Christmas present. I'm going to send you one of my coins. One of my coins here with my mug on it, made out of metal. It'll cover one of the smaller glasses. It'll also cover some of the larger ones. So Shayla, here's my email address. Send your mailing address. If you have one down in Mexico, I don't know if you're permanently down there or if you're. I know someone who's stuck in Mexico. He's an American who lives in Thailand, but he went on a vacation to Mexico and he got stuck there. Now he can't get back to Thailand or come back to the United States. Anyway, so send your mailing address to my email address, and I will send you one of my coins for Christmas. Adam Fay, thank you very much for tuning in. And Peated, thank you very much for tuning in. So we are continuing our empirical research of peated whiskeys. In this video, I'm going head-to-head between the Ballechin 10-year-old from Ederdour, bottled at 46% alcohol by volume, unchill filtered, natural color. Already did a review of this. And so in wanting to do a head-to-head, got to try to find something that, at least in your mind, is somewhat similar. You don't want to be too far off. Going up against the Port Charlotte 10-year-old, 50% ABV. Price-wise, they're probably somewhat comparable depending on where you are living. But I know both of these are very sort of dark, earthy, throaty, peated whiskeys. If memory serves me correct, I think the Port Charlotte might be a little bit more savory note. Carl Van Wallingham. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you much for tuning in. So it is Christmas, and then a lot of people are busy. And right now, people might still be opening presents or whatever with the kids and all that. Normally, what I want to do is establish that 5 p.m. Pacific is my normal time for going live on Fridays. But because of all the Christmas stuff going on, we're having a dinner later on. My brother will be in here in the kitchen cooking and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have some wine. So I thought, you know what? I'll start early, perhaps be able to connect with some of my European followers because they're 8 hours ahead, or people in the UK 8 hours ahead. Let's pour ourselves a little bit of the Ballechin, which is open up really, really nice. If you didn't catch it already, I did a review of the Ballechin 12-year-old Burgundy cask finish. That whiskey is absolutely spectacular. That would be some stiff competition for anything. And a little bit of the Port Charlotte, 10-year-old. Now, I've been doing, in case you haven't watched my previous videos, I've been doing like these little quizzes, and just as a means of sort of sparking conversation and for learning a little bit more about peat. And in doing these notes and little quiz things, I'm actually learning as well. So I'm just sharing with you all what I am learning. So let these breathe a little bit. Take a quick nosing. Ooh. Interesting. There is much more of a barbecue character. That's kind of expected from the Port Charlotte 10. A little more ashiness coming from the Ballechin. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring up one of my quiz slides. So quiz 1 actually goes back several videos ago, so I'm continuing the numbering. So let's go with the quizzes. Alrighty, question number 6. Right, I'm trying to do 2 or 3 questions per week. All right. So out of 130 or so, the number of how many distilleries are in Scotland is constantly changing. I have a map of Scottish distilleries on my wall in my office, and it only shows about 120, and that map is about 2 years old. So a lot of things have changed, and so I put there's around 130 or so. And of course, some are not don't have whiskeys available. Anyway, let's get into it. Out of 130 or so Scotch distilleries, only 8 have their own malting floor. By the way, if you look at whiskey.com, our German friends over there, if you look on theirs and what they say, their listing is incorrect. Just letting you know. Balvenie, Benriach, Bowmore, Glengarry, Highland Park, Kilchoman, Lefroy, and Springbank. Now, there's always a possibility that I could be missing some or that one of these have changed, but these are what I've been able to find. So I've been to Bowmore, I've been to Highland Park, I've been to Kilchoman, I've been to Lefroy, and I've been to Springbank. I was going to visit Glengarry, but the crowds were too large, and I wasn't going to go on, so I skipped that one. Anyway, so of these 8, which of these does not produce peated whiskey? Which does not produce peated whiskey? A, Glengarry, and that's not Garrioch, it's Glengarry. B, Benriach. C, Kilchoman. Or D, Springbank. Now, if you look at the whiskey.com, they list Glen Ord as producing peated whiskey, and that would be incorrect. So don't go by their website on this. Michael Hassler says, Ron Gersley says Glengarry. Whiskey Central says A. Peated says A. Michael Hassler says, had a 2011 Port Charlotte. It was the only bottle that I ever bought that the cork fell apart. Yeah, it happens. Ron Gersley, anyway, says, and Ron Gersley says, Merry Christmas. All righty. So what is the answer? Now, if you go to the Glengarry Distillery website, and there are some Glengarry peated whiskeys, and they do have their own malting floor, but they're no longer doing peated whiskeys. They're no longer doing peated whiskeys. So the peated Glengarry are really, 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 really old. Those are long time ago. They are now doing strictly unpeated whiskeys. So you might be able to find one somewhere, but they're not doing them anymore. So the correct answer is, going back to this, is Glengarry. Now, I've never seen a peated Glengarry, but if you go on their website, look them up. Apparently, they used to do them at one time. Now they're distinctively non-peated Highland single malts. And it looks like everybody got it right. Christopher Malloy, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so the correct answer was Glengarry. It was A. See, now, it's funny. These just flipped. Now, the Ballechin is showing more, as it get a little more air, showing a little bit more of savory notes, the barbecue. It's amazing how much peated whiskeys evolve in the glass or in the bottle. And now, it's funny, they just flipped. It's as if they just flipped. You almost wonder if I swap the glasses. Now the Port Charlotte's coming across as a little bit more smoky, a little more ashy. And the fruit notes are popping out more. There's getting more like green fruit notes, sort of a lemon, lime, melon. And I think I think peated whiskeys, they kind of warm you up a little bit on the inside in addition to the alcohol. There's something about smoky and peat I just love in the wintertime. But they also seem to be, a lot of different whiskeys will evolve and open up, as they get more oxygen, as they get aerated. I don't say oxidized. People say oxidized. Oxidized is actually a flaw. That's when your whiskey or wine has gone too far. So I don't use the term oxidized, I use the term aerated. So oxidized is actual flaw. Whiskeys will become sort of flat, like they lose their fruit character. And when wines get oxidized, they get kind of like a rusty nail. Like if you were to put a rusty nail in your mouth, they kind of get that character to it. So I don't like to use the term oxidized. Instead, I use the word aerated. Oxidized is typically more of a flaw than it is the process of opening up a whiskey. But I love how peated whiskeys evolve and as they become more aerated. Now, technically, you might be able to use the term oxidized. I think for clarity, I prefer to use the term aerated. It's funny. The Port Charlotte's now starting to smell like fish. It's starting to smell like smoked fish. And I never got that on this before. Just a little bit. It's sort of that oceanic sea breeze, the saltiness character. It just reminds me of smoked fish. Carl says, last week I opened a Ballechin 10-year-old from Signatory Vintage. Oh, okay. Fully matured on a first fill sherry butt and bottled cask strength. Phenomenal whiskey. Wow. Sounds good. So sometimes, Signatory been independent bottler or Douglas Lang or Scotch Malt Whisky Society, it's more independent bottlers. You can get some actually a lot better bottles. By the way, starting on December 1st, I started doing these. It was a Scotch. It was the Advent calendar. So I had the box is sitting over there. George and Amy sent me a box, a whiskey Advent calendar. So I've been doing the short format videos, one a day, and they've basically been sort of blind tasting. I haven't been trying to name everyone or identify everyone because it's too difficult, although I have a few of them. Christmas, December 25th. And I don't know if George planned it this way, but I'm a big Ardbeg fan, right? Oops, it's over there, right? Ardbeg, big Ardbeg fan. Christmas Day. What is Christmas Day? The Ardbeg 12-year-old cask strength, absolutely phenomenal whiskey. I don't know if he planned. Hey, I know Eric's a big Ardbeg fan. I'll put that one on Christmas Day. I don't know if he planned that way or it just worked out that way. Absolutely fantastic whiskey. I'm going to continue doing short videos, these short format videos, 5 days a week. So I'll have 2 regular videos plus 5 short videos. But I'm not going to keep doing blind tasting. I'll throw those in every once in a while. They're going to be 60-second informational videos, 60-second informational videos, just sort of a quick information about boom, 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 boom. And so I'll keep doing those. And those will actually go into they call the shelf. It's another location within YouTube. So in addition to being on my channel and being a normal recommendation, it'll also go into what's called the shelf. And so on the shelf, there's all kinds of videos for various kinds of topics. So these because of the way I formulate them, they're actually going into that. So the goal is to put little tasters, a complete video in and themselves. So it's not merely a trailer for something else, but complete video in itself. And yet it's also sort of a tease to get people to then come on and watch, get for more information, tune into the channel. Shayla says, I've been using your technique where you put a cap over a whiskey. Oh, and then let it sit on it. Really enjoy it. Exactly. Particularly when you've just uncorked it. So you open a bottle. I always try neck pour, usually off camera. Try neck pour, taste it. I might not even let's say like I poured this much from a neck pour. And I might not finish it. I might just sniff, make a few notes, taste, and then taste a little bit, and then the rest of it, do it like that. And I don't always do it the same every time. Sometimes maybe in the morning before I head off to work, 6:30 in the morning, pour myself some in a glass, put a cap on it, go to work. I don't taste anything before I go to work because I get in trouble. And then when I come home at the end of the day, as soon as I come in the door, I'll go over, smell it, taste it, and then note the differences between the two. And I might do that 2 or 3 times. Other times, just depends on my mood and how things are on. I don't do things exactly the same every time. Sometimes I might pour some. You're going to watch a movie, you're going to watch television, and then let's say you're watching a movie, 2-hour movie. Pour some, smell, taste it, and then put it off to the side. 15 minutes later, smell, taste. Are there any differences? halfway through the movie, smell, taste a little bit. At the end of the movie, so over a 2-hour period, see how it opens up over a 2-hour period. Just different ways of doing the same thing. Ultimately, just before I post my actual video, and you may already know this if you saw my video on how I review whiskeys, is I'll see who else has reviewed this. I'll take my notes and compare it to a bunch of others. Might be Scott and Bart, might be Daniel and Rex, it might be Bill the Whiskey Dick, it might be Rob Whiskey in the Six, might be Jeremy Sipper Social Club. It could be it might be a channel I've never heard of before, and just compare notes and see where I agree and disagree, see if they're sort of hitting the same marks that I do. Christopher Moy says, did you catch Rafi's new whiskey of the year? I think he did sort of like a prequel video for that. And he was concerned about the influence he has, because he doesn't want to give a whiskey of the year and then stores who are watching him start jacking up prices and that kind of a thing. He doesn't want to have that kind of negative influence. So he was given sort of a setup to his whiskey of the year, if I recall correctly. And so I don't think I've watched the actual video. He actually names it. I watched the prequel to that one. So I'll check it out. Don't give me any spoilers. Sometimes I'll make written notes and leading up to doing the review. Sometimes I'll just make mental notes and then compare them later on. All right, let's take a little sip. So Christopher Moyes, it's on Patreon. I'm not a Patreon or Ralphie, sorry. So if it's only on Patreon, what he's doing is he's keeping the retailers from being able to exploit his review to sell the whiskey. And that's smart. That's smart. So if it's only on Patreon, that's a smart to sort of get around that. I mean, it's amazing that an entire industry could shift and change, or retailers could do something different based on what a whiskey tuber does. That's amazing. But obviously, he's got a considerable size audience and has a lot of influence on people's purchases. I'm amazed how many people tell me they've made a purchase based on what I have said. I don't consider myself that big of an influencer or having that big of a channel, but I guess people are due. Which then makes you super self-conscious. It's like, oh, crud. Do I ever want to give a negative review? Do I ever, it really makes yourself conscientious about it. Nice. All right, let's do another Pete question. All righty. Pete quiz, question number 7. What is this thing? I got the arrow pointing to the pointy top of that building there. And who invented it? A, it is a pagoda ventilator invented by Charles Doig. B, it is a cupola ventilator invented by Charles Doig. C, it is a Doig ventilator invented by Charles Pagoda. Whiskey Central says A. Michael Hasser says, I remember the first time I opened a bottle of Lagavulin 16. Couldn't get the smell out of my nose all day at work and couldn't wait to get home to drink it. Yeah, isn't that a tease? My problem is, even if they allowed me to drink whiskey at work, I wouldn't get any work done. I want to relax when I'm having whiskey. I don't want to work. Coffee is more conducive to working than whiskey. So Whiskey Central says A. Whiskey Central says he designed over 56 of these in Scotland. Peated says A. So A, pagoda ventilator invented by Charles Doig. It's a cupola ventilator invented by Charles Doig, or it's a Doig ventilator invented by Charles Pagoda. You guys are going to be surprised at the answer. Info Freak, thank you much for tuning in. He says, A, as I recall, there's a picture of those on several Scotch bottles. Robert Dobrogowski says A. Thank you for joining in, Robert. All righty. So I'm going to I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. I'm going to bring up another slide and I'll read this. So this is an excerpt from scotchwhisky.com. Not the same thing as whiskey.com, but scotchwhisky.com. This is not the full article. To read the full thing, check it out. Fred Hawkins says, I would love to have a coin, Eric. How can I get one? Hoagie Bear, Guten Tag. Merry Christmas from Germany. How you doing, Hoagie? All right. So this is from 2018. It says, why distilleries have cupolas and not pagodas? It's the classic architectural feature of any malt whiskey distillery, the pagoda, except Charles Doig's design isn't a pagoda at all. Neil Wilson explains it all. So this isn't the entire article, it's just part of it. He says, I have been guilty as anyone of constantly referring to Charles Doig's most important contribution to the modern distillery architecture incorrectly. We've been doing it for decades, probably ever since the industry stopped calling it Doig's ventilator. And this is, I skipped over a couple paragraphs. Pagodas are multi-tiered, tower-like structures in which people could ascend and descend. They possess characteristic curved eaves and are of South Asian pre-Christian origin. The only feature of a pagoda that resembled Doig's creation would be the topmost tier, again, with those subtle curved eaves. Instead, cupola is exactly the correct term. Although derived from Islamic architecture, massive forms of them existed and were built throughout the first millennium. Much smaller and more functional cupolas were used in the 18th and 19th centuries when they were situated on top of barns to create an updraught to dry the hay below. Damp hay can create conditions where spontaneous combustion takes place, so cupolas were essential. Throughout the Midwest of the United States, the familiar form that Doig adopted can still be seen on many historic barns. They were square or octangular in form, had louvered sides, and the familiar pitched roof, definitely not a pagoda. But if Doig created this structure firstly at Dalwhinnie, then what was in place prior to his redesign? Something very, very English is the answer. The tall, rotating, fluted cardinal's hat, prevalent wherever hop drying oast houses existed. Adopted by Scottish distillers during the early to mid-19th century, these were mounted on the roofs of distillery kilns. Their function was to draw up air through the kiln, and they rotated depending on the direction of the prevailing wind. If Doig had not come up with this design, it is possible that oast house ventilators would still be seen across Scotland today and in all other countries that adopted Doig's design. Alrighty. Alrighty. So this relates to peat because this all has to do with the kilning of barley and of course, peating barley. Let's see if we've got any other comments here. All right. Ooh, earthquake. All right. So I am in California. Take a sip of the Port Charlotte 10. Wow. Wow. Totally. Oh my goodness. Hands down. I mean, just one sip. Anyway. Okay, so give a little history. So this relates to peat because those things were needed when you were malting your barley and using smoke, right? And end up peating your barley, which goes up there and you need to ventilate. The problem is with the shifting of wind, you needed something that would self-adjust to the direction of the wind. So what Doig did is he created this thing with the little flaps, and they change according to the direction of the wind. That's the major contribution. And then he uses Oriental design for the top. Now, I've been to 40 distilleries in Scotland, and they all call it a Doig ventilator, or they call it a pagoda. Now, most of the distilleries, there's only 8 out of 130 or so distilleries that are still malting their own barley, and yet you still see a lot of distilleries. So if they're not malting barley, why do they have those things on the building? It's just for looks. It's just for looks. There are certain things you associate with other things. And so even if it's not needed, you put it there just for the aesthetic view of it. In fact, I'd like to buy one of those things and put it on top of the house. Make the top of your house look like a distillery, right? By putting one of those ventilators up on top of it. So according to this article, technically it's not a pagoda, it's a cupola. It's a cupola. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is go over to Scotland, do a tour of a distillery, and when the 19-year-old tour guide says, "Oh, yes, we have the Doig pagodas. They're just for architectural interest. They don't actually function." I'm not going to go, "Actually, it's not a pagoda. It's a cupola." You don't ever do that, right? It's semantics. It's whatever. But functionally, historically, I found that article interesting that it's actually a cupola of Islamic design rather than a pagoda of Asian design. But functionally, Doig put that more Asian look on it, which is really, really cool. I think it's an interesting period that all over Scotland, you have something that looks very Oriental, right? Or Asian, right? Or Oriental on it. I think that fact alone is really, really interesting. So for the most part, they're not functional when you see them at distilleries. For the most part, it's just a look because people expect it to have that particular look, even if it doesn't actually do anything. It's kind of like you ever go to a restaurant, you go somewhere, or even houses you buy, and they have a fireplace, but they don't actually burn anything in it. You know, they might have a gas thing you can turn it on, but they don't use it for heating up the place. It's just an aesthetic for look. Very, very similar. These ventilators are more or less to fit in with the sort of architectural style of what Scottish distilleries look like. One of the differences, just for giggles, can you name me a distillery that does not have one because of what the building was originally used for? If you can name it, put it down there. Huggy Bear says the Port Charlotte 10 dethroned the Ardbeg 10 in direct comparison, right? Or do I remember falsely? No, absolutely. Yeah, it did. Actually, it did. If I recall correctly, it did. But yeah, so what I like about the Port Charlotte 10 is it's got there's a savory note there. I like the extra little salty note there. And of course, it's at 50 AB. This is a 4 to 6 ABV, although that wouldn't necessarily be the deciding factor. It just has a little bit more complexity with that real nice barbecue savory note. That is really, really, really nice. Ron says, you brought up influencing whiskey purchases. He bought the Port Charlotte 10, Mona 12, Enoch Pete Hard, and Red Breslau style, to name a few on your recommendations. Wow. Never have disappointed. Well, Ron, I'm really, really glad. I wouldn't. So here's the thing we got to do in terms of people's recommendations. It's not just, hey, Erik knows a lot of stuff. Whatever he says, that's what I want to buy. It's about figuring out who's similar to your tastes. So in terms of making recommendations, like whether it's music or food or wine or anything, recommendations, with someone who says, can you recommend this? I'm not going to start telling them what I recommend. I'm going to first ask them, so what are you currently drinking? What have you currently liked? Let's say wine. Someone says, oh, well, I've been drinking this, Pinot Noir from Santa Cruz Mountains. Or I've been really enjoying this, really oaky, buttery Chardonnay from Rombauer out of the Napa Valley. So I go, oh, you like Rombauer? Because not everybody does. Some people think it's too buttery. Yeah, I really like that. Okay. Now I'm getting a sense of what they like. And based on what they like, I can kind of find other things that are similar that are sort of in the range, maybe more affordable. But I might also say, hey, if you like something like that, try something a little different. And I would specifically tell them it's different. So in terms of making recommendations, I always have to find out what you like first in a ballpark and then make recommendations from there. In fact, I was just yesterday, I was at a local shop here. It's about a mile down the road. And there were some younger guys in there. And the guy said he likes sherried whiskeys. Eli, the owner, likes it when I'm in there. So he likes sherried whiskey. So I named a bunch of different sherried whiskeys. In fact, I recommended for an Irish, I recommended the Redbreast Lustal was one of them. So I recommended different. Have you tried this? Oh yeah, I've had that. I said the Gledronic. So then recommendations based on that structure. But I also recommended the Buna 12 because he said it's not peated, is he? Because he said he didn't like peated. I said try it. If it's debatable what it doesn't have peat. Most says it doesn't have peat. Some people say it has like 3 ppm, whatever. But it's not a peated whiskey. Generally speaking, it's not a peated whiskey. So I recommended the Bunnahabhain 12. I said one of the best, probably one of the best core range whiskeys on Islay. So I recommended the Bunnahabhain 12. All right. So I'm glad you enjoyed those. I'm glad you like those. My guess is we are somewhat simpatico in terms of what we like. And because we're simpatico, therefore you sort of recommend you can go based on my recommendation. Now, if I come across a whiskey that I think is a little on the edge, that I think will be controversial, I said, you know what? I'll say straight up, this is not going to be for everybody. There are some people that are just not going to dig this. And I can kind of tell that'll be a little bit too, like the Ardbeg Drum, the Ardbeg Drum Committee release that came out a couple years ago. I knew people are going to love it and people aren't, right? I just knew it. And so my recommendations is with a caveat as, hey, this is really, really different. All righty. Donald Rance, thank you much for tuning in, and Merry Christmas. Caught up in the comments. Casper Henker says, Glenfarclas doesn't have one, but as I said, it's on their bottles. I've been to Glenfarclas, and I honestly can't remember. Michael Hassler says, high quality sound effects, big time production for your channel. Thank you very much. Put a lot in there. Whiskey Centrist, Glenfarclas has one on one of the coolest pagodas. They have a series called the Pagoda series. Okay. I'm kind of, I'd have to go back and look at my photos because I've been to Glenfarclas. It seemed to me they had one. Casper says the visitor center has a small pagoda kind of on the side. Mike Hosh says my sound effects put Star Wars to shame. You're overdoing it. All right. So one of them that I don't recall ever saying is Deanston. Deanston. Now Deanston used to be not a sawmill. It was a cotton mill. It was a cotton mill. So the whole architecture of Deanston doesn't look like your typical distillery because it's a converted cotton mill. So they don't have them on theirs. Anyhow, so hands down, real easy. Port Charlotte beats the Ballechin. But what made me choose these is there a certain point in which they have a certain commonality to it. I said, yeah. Peat can come across a lot of different ways. Both of these have a sort of, particularly when you first open up the Port Charlotte, when you first open up before it gets to aerate, there is sort of a very dark, earthy, I don't want to say green, not quite vegetal, but it's sort of more of a dark, earthy, like dirt character to them. And then what's really nice is the Port Charlotte then layers on top of that savory notes, salty notes, and so on and so forth. And I think that is what I found in common between these two. Is that they're a little bit more earthier, darker, you might think of richer peat character than a lot of other whiskeys. And I think that was the point in which they had in common. The difference, though, is when you compare them head to head is, and one of the advantages of doing head-to-head comparison is they will make what is different. The differences will really pop, right? The differences will really pop. I mean, you look at a white piece of paper and it looks, okay, it's a white piece of paper. Now put, something that's black in front of it or red or something really bright and it'll pop even more. Same thing. The differences will really, really show forth a lot more when you go side by side. And that's probably one of the advantages of doing a hit. Sometimes you may even be surprised. Oh man, I thought this was going to win, but it turns out, no, I like this one more. You may be surprised at what you think you're going to come across versus what you really come across. Hey, Greg's Whiskey Guide. How you doing? Um, um, Happy Noel. Happy Noel. Anyway, I saw Too Late. I was going to have a premiere Too Late at the same time, but Merry Christmas to you. Thank you very much. Now, but absolutely fantastic. I want to quickly look these up real quick, just see how much they cost. I want to do a price comparison. I should have done this before. Usually I've done this before. See how much, what's the price comparison? At least in my neighborhood. Okay, so the Ballechin, come on. $53. And sorry, I should have done this ahead of time. Oh, so $70. So there is a price difference. $10 difference, a $10 difference, give or take, depending on where you're at. $10 difference. Joyeux Noel, if I pronounce that correctly. All right. So what I pay, if I was looking about one or the other, would I pay the extra $10 to get the Port Charlotte? Give or take $10? I would say yes. I would say yes. I like it a lot. I like it that much more. I would pay the extra $10. And Greg says he likes the PC-10, but he prefers a 16-year-old. But that's probably another bump. Bon Noel. Bon Noel. Hoogie Bear says, never had a bad Ballechin. All range from good to very good. Edward Dower, however, a whole different story. Half were bad, some good, only very, 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 very good. Weird. Yeah, I've heard that about Edward Dower, their other whiskeys, that there's a lot of inconsistency. However, I don't know how long ago that was, Hoogie. From what I've heard, I've not tasted them, that they've sort of improved that they have a lot more consistency going on in the more current barrels. So, but these are both excellent whiskeys. Wouldn't be sad if anybody gave me either one of them. Now there's more chocolate character coming out of this one. Wasn't getting necessarily any chocolate character out of the Port Charlotte. Casper says he remembers reading stories about 70s Edward Dower. See, that's the thing is, once you gain a reputation, it's from the 1970s, 10 years later, 20 years later, those old stories can still stick around, even if they're not true anymore, even if that doesn't really represent where you're at. Greg says he's never had a bad experience with Ballechin. So maybe it's just some, so this, I mean, this happens in the wine world. It was some Austria. Yeah, it was Austrian wines. They had this big scandal in Austria with their wines. And so they had a bad reputation for their wines. And then, even though they made all the changes and everything's been changed, I won't go into the details. Someone was putting some glycol in the wine. And so they came up with new regulations to, to stop all that. And they fixed, even though that happened and that reputation that sort of still sticks around, that's why, protecting your brand of your location is really important. One winery or one distillery can really throw off the reputation of a region, and it lasts for years and years and years and years and years and years. So it's really important that collectively a region, a wine region, or just a whiskey region maintains its reputation. It's not just independent little businesses. What one does affects the reputation of them all. And so it's really important to protect the name of your region and not allow someone outside to use your name, use your good name. This has happened with Napa. There were producers who would put in the word Napa in the label, even though their wines weren't coming from the Napa Valley. And so they get sued and all that. Anyway. All right, so I'm on vacation until I go back to work till January 4th, which is very, very nice. Be spending most because of COVID crap. I'm going to get out one day, take a trip out to the woods, but I'm going to spend a lot of my time working on doing my videos and so forth. As I mentioned earlier, hoping to keep put out content 7 days a week, 2 regular videos, 1 live stream, and 5 short videos. And I'm going to be switching to informational videos rather than just say 60-second whiskey reviews. And hopefully I won't burn out. Going into 2021. So next week, it'll be New Year's Day. I'll do a live stream next week as well. I'll figure out what the time is. I'll probably do my normal time slot at 5 o'clock. A lot of whiskey tubers are going to be doing live streams, ushering in the new year. In fact, Bourbon Bites has sent out an invitation, inviting people to come on his channel. They're doing sort of welcome in the new year. I don't know if I'm going to be doing anything like that because I tend to go to bed like 8 or 9 o'clock. I'm an old man, and staying up that late, I don't know if I can hang with that. But I will be back here next week, and we're going to continue our peated whiskey quiz next week. I still have more questions. Just a couple of weeks, to learn more and more about peated whiskeys. The Highland Peated Whiskey Marathon will continue on, probably now going into early February. As I keep buying more and more. So I picked up a few more Highland Peated whiskeys. Picked up a Wolfburn, a lightly peated. I picked up I got a gift. I got a gift of a Glenfiddich. It's called Fire and something or other. It's a blend of single malts, their own single malts, of peated and non-peat. So I'll be adding that one to the list. The Whiskey Central says she goes to bed early too. By the way, if you guys haven't checked out Whiskey Central, check out Whiskey Central. I used to be able to on YouTube. You could go over to the chat and you see the 3 dots, and you could go and it would give you a link to their channel. YouTube changed that, and I think the reason why was people would sort of jump in on chats just to try to promote their own channel, hoping that someone would click on that and they would get subscribers by sponging off another channel. And they got rid of that function. So I used to tell people, hey, just move over to the right, click on the thing, and then check out the channel. So if you haven't already, check out Whiskey Central. That's Shayla. I think, if I recall correctly, she's an American living down in Mexico, and doing content down there. Greg says, Wolfburn, yes, it is Fire and Cane. That's right. So I put it right, and some rum cast involved. So I haven't opened it yet. That'll be towards the end of the Whiskey Marathon. Yeah, at my age, I'm used to waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and so my pattern, my normal pattern is just stay in that pattern. And if I try to push myself to stay up, too late, I feel like I have jet lag the next day. And I'm just feel dead the next day. I just don't do that. Shayla, I'm just kind of curious a whole nother story. I'm kind of curious why you went down to Mexico. Anyway, so check out Whiskey Central. Check out her content. She makes me feel very old. I'm 54. I'll be 55 this next coming year. And if I recall correctly, she's like 24 or something like that. She's young enough to be my daughter. I'm one of the old fart whiskey tubers out here. Hey, Taylor, actually, thank you very much for tuning on. I've been picking up a few too many bottles recently. Last year I had maybe 5. Now I have almost 50, 11 Irish, 15 Scotch, and 17 American. So this past year, I did like 95 whiskey reviews. And that doesn't include doing comparison videos, live streams, or the shorts, or the little short videos I've been recently doing. So it's been a real busy year. By the way, January 1st, I will post my top 10 of 2020 video. Top 10 of 2020. And I think you're going to be surprised, unless you're following and watch every one of my videos, you're going to be surprised what shows up and what doesn't show up in that top 10. My top 10 for 2020. So my top 10 is based on something not necessarily something I reviewed, not just something I tasted, but something I actually reviewed. And it has to be a whiskey that had not just a matter of points, but a matter of having that wow factor. So my top 10 of 2020 will post on January 1st. She says she wants to move to Spain. Wow, that's cool. So you want to go like Rioja or Roberto de Duero, or do you want to go south? He's not a whiskey tuber, but he shows up in the chat. A Welsh Toro, I believe, is over in Spain. Frequently tunes in. If you're in Spain, you should get into Spanish wines. Check out Rioja and Roberto de Duero. Of course, sherry from Jerez. A lot of great quality and quality price ratio. Some of the best values are in Spain. Spanish wines. I know it's a whiskey town. I'm not supposed to talk about wines. Hoagie Bear. I've recently been selling bottles on eBay to reduce my stock. First batch of 9 bottles did quite well. So that is something I've been issuing because I now have bottles down here. Some of these bottles are actually going to go down to Texas. I have doubles. I have a whole lot of sherried bottles. Half of those are going to go down to Texas. Whenever this COVID crap ends, I'm going to take them down to the school down there. And the other half will remain here. I'm going to do a series in 2021 on sherry and sherry-fired whiskey. So it'll be a semester of sherry whiskey. So people learn more about sherry wine and sherry cask influenced whiskeys. Okay. So Whiskey Essential, she's been talking to Welsh Toro. Cool. The two major regions in the whiskey world that I have yet to really dive into and do a series on is Canada and Japan. The challenges of these two, and I'll put them off to the last, is the best Canadian whiskeys don't get exported. So my plan is to go to Canada and bring some home. But with this COVID crap, I can't do that. Japan, I'm waiting for them to get themselves together. I wish they had something equivalent to the Scotch Whisky Association or something close to the Texas Whisky Association to regulate their labels and be more transparent and be more authentic as to what is truly Japanese whiskey. The ones that I would like to review, like to have, are unbelievably expensive. The ones with age statements and all that, but we'll see how it goes. Hoagie Bear says, did I do India? I mean, India has 2 producers that get distribution, Paul John and Amrut. I have some Amrut, but that's not, India is not a major whiskey region. In terms of your major whiskey regions, obviously Ireland, Scotland, right? United States, Canada, and India. Canada and Japan. Those are your major whiskey regions. Everything else, okay. So maybe a Bulgaria does a whiskey. Okay, Australia does some whiskeys. But they're not major, widely distributed whiskey producers, right? I mean, I've had one Australian from Tasmania, and that was Lark. So in order to become really known as a whiskey region, they need more global distribution and a distinctive style that they are doing that makes them stand out from everybody else. They really get on the whiskey map, right? Donovan says some of the good Canadian stuff is starting to make its way in the United States. Sharing up until, okay, cool. We'll have to look for it. Peated says you forget Imperial Blue. What the hell is Imperial Blue? I don't know what that is. Imperial Blue. Oh, is that? Oh, that's another Indian whiskey, if I recall correctly. Still, I've never ever seen it. So again, 2 distilleries does not a region make, right? If a country only has 2 distilleries, that you're not getting onto the map, right? It's sort of like Kavalan, right? What else is there other than Kavalan coming from that country, right? I've tasted Kavalan, fantastic whiskeys. But you're not doing a study of the country. You would just be doing that particular distillery. Doing whiskeys from two distilleries from one country does not make a study, in my opinion. Again, I've done Amrut. I've done Amrut. I'll probably do some Amrut in the future, but they're not a major producing region. Greg says India is the most important one, but one that couldn't be exported as whiskeys, as SW sues them. Oh, as they don't use barley or grain. But you're right, they use barley and molasses. Right. So a lot of their whiskeys aren't made from grain, so they don't fit any other country's definition of whiskey. Right. And then they'll even blend barley spirit with molasses and whatever else. So it's almost like a blend between rum and a whiskey. So, and again, that's something the locals drink there. It's not something been exported. I've heard the stuff from non-Indian palates isn't all that desirable. So there's no reason to get into it, right? Okay. Greg says 3 distillers with Rampur. I've heard of Rampur. I've never seen it on the shelf. It's not just a matter that the distiller exists, it's that you can get it. Generally speaking, available. Like Lark, right? The only reason why I ever had Lark Distillery is because of Tom R. Tom R. got him at Benny's in Chicago. And when we met up down in Wichita, Kansas with Scott and Bart, he gave them to me. And they're great whiskeys, absolutely fantastic. Loved them whiskeys. But not wide distribution. They're just really too difficult to get a hold of. There's also Starward, right? STAWARD. I have one of those. Again, two whiskeys from a country does not a region make. All right. Is this the last day to see a whiskey Santa? Yeah. I'll probably, today's Christmas. I'll probably give up the whiskey hat, the Santa hat, and hang it up until next year. Huggy Bear. Canada caught up with really interesting stuff from new craft distilleries. Too bad there's virtually none of it coming to Europe or Germany, or even to the United States. They're southern neighbors. So the goal would be to get across the border, visit the distilleries, meet Rob and Jeremy over there, maybe even Food Quig, although they're in different parts of Canada. I've met Dr. Don Livermore from Weiser, but I met him in San Francisco. Really, really neat guy. Sat in on a lecture series that he gave. It was absolutely fascinating. This thing just jumped. So Greg was saying there are 2 distilleries in Taiwan, but get your point. Yeah, I mean So the issue of tasting a number of different whiskeys from a place, from a number of different distilleries, is it requires you to get a number of samplings to get a sense of the region and what it is producing. So the Napa Valley has 400 or so wineries. I've been to 136 of them. And I've tasted, over the last 20 years, probably a few thousand Cabernet Sauvignon from the Napa Valley, right? That gives me a really good sense of what Napa Valley is all about. Same thing with Bordeaux. I've been to Bordeaux, been to the East End, right bank or the left bank, right bank, but traveled all over Bordeaux, right? Visiting the regions. I've for a number of years gone to the Institut Masterwine Bordeaux tasting event, which will go through 60 different producers. Taste a lot of Bordeaux, love Bordeaux wine. Do I know what Bordeaux is all about? Yep. If I only had 2 wines from Napa Valley, would I know what Napa is about? Nope. If I only had 2 wines from Bordeaux, would I know what Bordeaux is about, or Burgundy or anything else? Nope. 2 doesn't give you enough of differences and variation. And you got not just a matter of 2 different wineries or chateau, but a number of different vintages. Same thing with whiskeys is you need to taste a number of different distilleries, say all the distilleries in Islay, taste all their core range, plus their specialty bottles, and now you're getting a sense of what Islay is all about. And if you can go there, of course, you're getting even a little bit more in depth. And that's why my big thing is about going there. You get a sense of the place, meeting the people, and then tasting them on the place where it's made. That's really, really, and of course, meeting the people and everything else is about what it's about going there. Am I going to go to India just for 2-3 distilleries? No. Am I going to go all the way to Taiwan just to visit 2 distilleries? No. Japan has, a last count on the map, I saw 9 distilleries. So that's kind of like Islay, right? They have 9 with Ardno, but Ardno doesn't have anything released yet. So what I would like to do, and I actually made a list of bottlings you can get from those 9 distilleries. The problem is, I don't know if they're old enough, and I want to guarantee, absolute guarantee, that they're 100% come from the distillery and not a blend with Scotch or Canadian or any other type of whiskey. It defeats the purpose of studying Japan if you're not drinking Japan. I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? Hoagie Bear says, but you could perhaps do German or French whiskey. There are plenty of distilleries, but you need to come over here. Exactly. So that's the other issue is, what are they producing and what's the accessibility, right? Now, if I was going to go to Germany to visit distilleries, I would bring my brother, who speaks it fluently. He does a lot of translation in German. So maybe one of these days, the two of us. But but when you think of Germany, does your mind go, oh, that's a whiskey region? No. In terms of beverages, I think of wines, right? You think of Rieslings and Gewürztraminer, right? And Blaufränkisch and Blauburgunder and Grauburgunder, and I think of wines. Or beer. Most people probably think of beer. You don't think of whiskeys necessarily. But see, this thing is, has Germany or any of these other countries made whiskeys that have a distinction that is a representative of that country? That's the main issue. That's the main issue. Are they doing something distinctive? So Ireland being distinctive from Scotland, North America, obviously bourbon, very, 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 very distinctive. So are they doing something distinctive enough that makes it worth studying, other than it happens to come from another country? And that's the other issue. Is that, do they have a particular profile that makes them distinct from other distilleries, and hence worth studying and getting to know from around the world? And until they do, and they become widely available, for now, from an academic standpoint, sticking to previously named Ireland, Scotland, North America, United States, Canada, and Japan, right? And I'm just keeping my fingers on the pulse of what's going on in Japan and say, okay, now's a good time to do a study. And same thing with Canada. See what's going on up there. All right, Donald Rance, thank you very much for tuning in. And we're about to hit the top of the hour, so I'm going to wrap it down as well. It's coming up here on 1 o'clock here in California. Time for lunch. Hey, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I will go live again on New Year's Day next week. And if you watch this on the replay, thank you very much for tuning in. And don't forget to like. If you haven't already, subscribe. And we're going to have another more Peated quiz next week. All right. So we're going to go out with another Christmas tune. And this is where I'll also, on the replay, I'll put in the subscribe buttons to remind people to subscribe or watch other videos. But we'll sing along as we go out.